Welcome to Learning Dorico. I'm Dr. Scott Watson. In this video, I'll be sharing the basics of note entry in Dorico. We'll cover things such as note input with the QWERTY keyboard, including a few useful keyboard shortcuts, adding accidentals, and toggling enharmonic equivalents. We'll also show you how to select pitches with a MIDI keyboard controller, which can greatly speed up note entry. In addition to entering basic rhythms, we'll show you how to add dotted rhythms and tuplets, such as triplets or sextuplets. We'll also demonstrate how to record music into Dorico by playing it in real time on a MIDI keyboard. Other useful items included in this video include adding cautionary accidentals, also known as courtesy accidentals, how to force a duration when Dorico defaults to a rhythm that you don't like, shortcuts for repeating music that's already entered, ways to change how beams are grouped, and configuring various Dorico preferences so note entry works the way you want it to. All right, that's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Okay, we've launched Dorico and I'm ready to start a project. First of all, I want to say that many of the things I'm going to do up front here to get my project set up are things that I've explained in my first video on the overview of Dorico and a look at the user interface. So definitely check out that video first if you haven't done that. But anyway, I'll go to the File menu, choose New, could also do Command N as a shortcut. Then I like to choose just a single player, and I'm going to choose oboe, one of my favorite sounds for like a lead sheet or a single staff score, and say Add. Okay, now I've got that score. I'm going to just reposition this so I can use all the real estate on my screen. I'm going to go into write mode rather than staying in setup mode because that's where we're going to do most of our note entry. There are two views, page view and galley view, and you can toggle the shortcut. Option Command 1 gets you page view, Option Command 2 gets you galley view. So by doing that, I can go back and forth. I'm going to stay in page view and put the time signature. So that would be my Shift M for meter. Let's make this in 4/4. And let's make the key signature, that's Shift K. Let's make this D major. And let's set this up to have, let's say 35 measures. So that would be Shift B for bars and put in 35. So we have a bunch of bars to fill in just to get started. Okay, I also want to get rid of the oboe staff name for this example. So I'm going to go into Library and Layout Options. I could also do Shift Command L, the shortcut to get into the layout options, and then let's go into staves and systems. And one of the things I can say is staff label on first system, none, staff label on subsequent system, none. Of course, if I wanted to make that my default, I could say save as default, and I would never see those, but I do like to have those for scores, larger scores. So just for this particular score, I'm going to say let's not show that, apply, and then we go back to our score, and you see there's no staff label there. Okay, what else before we actually start putting in the notes? This thing up here is called the system track, and I actually like to see it. Some people don't, so if you don't want to view that, go to the view menu and turn off the system track, but I'm going to leave it on. Another thing is, let's go ahead and put the title in. We'll just call this Note Entry Basics, and I'm going to get rid of this flow title. I explained in my last view what a flow is. It's like a movement, but we don't need to show that for this particular one. So I'm going to open up the information, that's Command I for the piece, and call the title Note Entry Basics. And I'll put in my name as the composer. There's no arranger, so I don't need to put that in. Really, I don't need to put in anything else. I'm just going to put that in. But for flow, I'm going to end up getting rid of the flow title, so I don't really care about that. It's really just the project that I need to have that title. So apply, and now we've got Note Entry Basics by Scott Watson. Let's get rid of the flow title. We'll go into the layout options. I could just type flow up here, and it will tell me page setup flows. And I can say show flow headings for all flows, for the first, let's say never. Just don't show the flow heading and apply that. And now we don't see that flow heading. Notice what I did there too, by the way. When I went into the layout options, I wasn't sure where I'd find the flows. So I actually just typed in the search field here, flow, and then it took me to it. If I looked around, I could have said page setup, oh, there it is, and that would eventually take me to the same thing, and I could have said never. So you can use that search field to help you find things. All right, close. Okay, and I'm going to save this because we haven't saved it yet. Let's go ahead, save, Command S is the shortcut. I'm going to put it on my desktop, which makes it easy to find, and we'll call it Note Entry Basics. There I go, I've saved it. Okay. Now I'm actually ready to start putting in notes. Okay, we're going to start with some basic note input. We need to be in the write mode, select a measure, just click on that rest, and then the shortcut return puts us in note input mode. So we're ready to choose rhythms and notes. I'm going to choose the rhythms from this palette over here. I'm going to be using keyboard shortcuts. Now, a little trick that I'll show you is that I took some clear labels, and I took a Sharpie. This is a silver colored Sharpie, and I just wrote the rhythms on there, and then I'm sticking them to my actual keys, to my actual QWERTY keys. Having these shortcuts here will really save me a lot of time as I'm learning what the shortcuts are. There's also a PDF you can download from the manufacturer that has the keyboard shortcuts on it as well, and you might want to have that handy with you when you're learning to do note entry like this. So in any case, if I press the number 6, that gives me the quarter note. If I press the number 5, that changes it to an eighth note. So I'm going to go back to a quarter note, and I'm going to type the letter D on my QWERTY keyboard. Now notice it gave me a low D, but I actually want a high D. So Option Command and the up arrow is the shortcut for transposing octaves, and Option Command and the down arrow gets me down. Also, if I just want to go a single step, I could do Option up arrow, and that takes me just one note at a time, and that could get me up an octave or down an octave. So Option arrow is a step, and Option Command arrow is an octave, and between those two you'll be able to get around. Okay, anyway, I've got my first D in. How do I get that eighth rest? Well, it turns out in Dorico you don't actually enter rests, you just move forward on the grid. These little lines here, these little tick marks here, is the grid, and the grid can be set up, right now it's set up to eighth notes, but it could be set up to 16th notes if you want more resolution, but I'm going to leave it at eighth notes because that's all I need. And if I just press the forward arrow and go to the second half of the second beat and then type the letter A, but I have to make sure I change my duration to eighth note, that's number 5, right? That's how I get my A. Now I'm going to go back to number 6, press D, and then I'm going to use the forward arrow to go to the last eighth note of the measure, make sure I change my rhythm to eighth note and A. By the way, let's just say I forgot to change my rhythm. Say I left it at a quarter note and typed A. It actually gives me a quarter note duration, but I really don't want that. So I have a couple choices. I can either edit undo, change it to the eighth note and do A, right? Or I could, if I wanted to just delete that A, right? I could just click on the A itself and hit delete. And then I'm back to where I was. In any case, now I'm going to do a bunch of eighth notes. So that's number 5, D, A, D, F sharp. I just typed F, but it knew it was F sharp because of the key signature. And then the high A, it intuitively knew. But again, if it came out wrong, I would just use Option Command and the up or down arrow to get it in the right octave. Okay, back to quarter notes, and we're going to do G, and then use the forward arrow to toggle to the up of beat 2, change it to 5, E, change it to 6. So you have to get used to these shortcut rhythms, and then a series of eighth notes, and then half note, that's number 7. But I wanted the low one, so Option Command down arrow. All right, so this is using the QWERTY keyboard and these keyboard shortcuts for the rhythms. Notice that I'm choosing the rhythm first, and then I'm typing in the QWERTY letter for the note that I want. And then if it's in the wrong octave, I can do Option Command up or down arrow, or if I just want to move up a step, that's just Option up or down. By the way, when you're in note entry mode, you can actually just click the notes on the staff. It's just a very time-consuming and tedious way to do it. I would definitely discourage you from doing it that way, but let me go ahead and hit the return key, go into note entry mode, and choose quarter note, right? And then float my over the D. You can kind of see the shadowy note there and right on the grid. And then I want to do an eighth note on the up of beat 2, so that would be here. And then back to quarter note. right on beat 3, and then back to 8th note on the up of beat 4. Right? So you could actually click notes in. It's just the slowest way to do it in Dorico. Let's throw a few shortcuts in here that I think are really useful, even though we've only just learned how to put a few notes in. Let's say you wanted to copy all of this, these first 4 measures. You wanted to copy them. You can select them by selecting the first note, holding the Shift key, and selecting the last note. If you hit the letter R on your keyboard, you actually repeat. It just repeats it. What a great shortcut, right? Let me undo that. Another great shortcut is if you select that and hold the Option key down and then click where you want to paste it, basically, it'll actually copy it as well. So 2 ways to just repeat something that you've just done. One of them is just select the music, and I did the version I did is called shift clicking. I click the first one, hold the Shift key down, click the last one, and then hit R, and that repeats it, that copies it. And then the other way is called option clicking, and that is whatever you select. Now I don't have to select all 4 measures. I could select just, let me shift click that much music. And then down here, I could option click it, and it does it. It copies it. So option clicking will copy it. Okay. Anyway, let me go ahead and just show you one more shortcut here. I'm going to delete that. Let's say I wanted to delete just the notes in measure, what would this be? Measure 6. So I could shift click those, hit delete, and notice measure 6 now is a measure of rest. So I deleted the notes in measure 6 by hitting the delete key. But let's say I want to actually delete measure 6. That's where you would click on the system track, click on the trash can, and now where measure 6 was is gone, and now this measure, which was measure 7, has moved forward. So deleting notes is as simple as selecting them and hitting the delete key, and Dorico adjusts everything. Deleting measures is as simple as selecting the system track bar for that measure and hitting the trash can, and then the measure disappears. Before long, when you're working in Dorico with note entry, you're going to encounter the need to put in sharps, flats, or naturals, or enharmonic equivalents, like a G sharp is an A flat. So let me just quickly show you that. We're going to go into note entry mode here, hit the return key. I'm just going to put a series of quarter notes. Let's say this B here, I'd like to make a B flat. Right over here in this panel, we do have a flat sign, and I'm going to undo that. We also could just hit the negative key, which is the equivalent of, it's the keyboard shortcut for flat. Okay, we could also, if we wanted it to be sharp, we could hit the sharp key, or the keyboard equivalent would be the plus sign, which is the equals sign as well. That key is the same key. And then if I wanted it to be natural, right, that would be right next to the negative sign is the number 0. And that's the shortcut for making it natural. So let's go ahead and make it a flat. I'm going to hit the negative sign. Let's here make this flat as well. And let's make this one flat as well. Notice the flat does not need to repeat itself because it's earlier in the measure. But let's say I take it up an octave, Option, Command, up arrow, then the flat does appear. That's sort of part of the preferences in Dorico. And I'll show you that in a second. Over in the next measure, we have a cautionary natural sign, but say I want that natural sign to be in parentheses. That is an area that's called the properties panel. Command 8 opens that up at the bottom, and that's where you could say for that accidental, let's put it in brackets. And now that natural sign will have the parentheses. By the way, there's a lot of great stuff down here in the properties panel for notes that eventually we'll get to in future videos. But for now, I just wanted to show you that. Let me go back. Command 8 will close that panel. Let's make this B a B flat. That's the negative sign or the minus sign. Let's make this a flat, but let's make it enharmonically a G sharp. So that's where I would use Option minus to make it the enharmonic equivalent lower, the note lower than A. Or let's say I wanted to make it the enharmonic equivalent higher than A, I'd use Option plus. And of course we don't want that. That's very that's very confusing. But let me make it a G sharp. So Option minus gets me the G sharp. Over here we have A flat, but again, if I want to make it G sharp, Option minus. And if I want to make it an octave above, Option Command up arrow, and notice the sharp appears again. So We've sort of shown you a lot of different ways that you can toggle enharmonic equivalence. That's the option and plus and minus, or whether you want to just use the plus and minus alone to get the flats and the sharps, and the number 0 to get naturals. Let's go back here. Last thing is I'll put 0, put a natural sign, and I'm going to put that in parentheses because, again, it's not necessary. So Command 8 opens up that panel. We toggle the accidental and say round brackets, and now I have my courtesy accidental. Okay, last thing I want to show you, let me close this, Command 8, close that. Last thing I want to show you is some of the Dorico preferences that have to do with enharmonics and accidentals. So let's go into notation options, and that is Shift Command N, the shortcut for that. And then let's go into accidentals, and there's all sorts of things that we could ask it to do. For instance, not use any cautionary accidentals, or use them with parentheses, so I don't have to do that properties panel thing that I just showed you. And actually, I prefer that. I would say if you're going to use a cautionary accidental, always put it in parentheses, so I would choose that. Here it says notes in the same octave in the following bar, so use a cautionary accidental if it's in a bar after it. Yeah, I like that. And let's also put it in parentheses. So some of these different things you can set to be the way you want them. I'm just setting them up the way I like them, and I always choose parentheses. So, and then apply, and then close, and then Dorico will follow your commands as you go to put in notes. Okay, one of the better ways to put in notes, in my opinion, is using a MIDI keyboard. So if you have a USB connection from your MIDI keyboard controller to your computer, watch what happens when we go into the note input mode, hit the return key, and I'm going to select 8th note, and I could have used the shortcut 5 to select that 8th note, and I'm just going to play a series of pitches on my MIDI keyboard: D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, A flat, and those notes went right in. I didn't have to select them from my QWERTY keyboard. So they were automatically put in. Now I will say this, I prefer to select the note first and then put the rhythm in. So if you'd like to do that, Dorico has an option. Let's go over here, and I'm going to hit return key, but this time I'm going to press the letter K, which is for pitch before duration. So that allows me to sort of select my pitch. You see the cursor moving around, but it's not actually putting the note in. So if I wanted that high D, right now, after selecting the high D, I can type the number 6 and put that high D in. And then I can use the forward arrow to move my cursor to the up of 2, hit the A, and then type the number 5, right? The keyboard shortcut for 8th note, and so on. Select the high D, type the number 6, move the cursor forward to the up of beat 4, select the A, type number 5. And since I have a series of 8th notes, I'm going to play, D, 5, A, 5, D, 5, F sharp, 5. And then when I play the high A, type the number 7, and then go back to my number 6 for the quarter note. So you can see this goes a lot faster. Right? So this is MIDI entry, but pitch before duration, and it's a fast way to put it in. Let's continue on by talking about dotted rhythms, and the keyboard shortcut for that is a period. So say, for instance, I want to do a series of dotted quarter 8th rhythms. I'm going to start down here on the low D, but I'm going to type the dot, and notice that the icon is now highlighted. So when I press the number 6, it actually gives me a dotted quarter note. Now, it actually gave me a quarter tied to an 8th note. That's a Dorico preference, but watch what happens when I put in I'll put another D in, but this time it'll just be a number 5. Now it put the 8th note in, and it turned the quarter tied to an 8th. It turned it into a dotted quarter. And I'm going to, again, hit the period for the dot and put a F sharp and then an 8th note. Right? Now, I will say I would rather actually add the dot after I put the quarter note in. And Dorico does have a way to do that. It's just that we have to actually go into a preference to change that. I'm going to go to the Dorico preferences and choose note, input, and editing. And I'm going to say, How about we put these things like accidentals and rhythm dots and articulations, we haven't done articulations yet, but how about we put those things in after inputting the note? If you prefer to do that, make that change. I am going to make that change because I'm used to, with another program, putting the dots in after I put the notes in. But you could leave it, right? If you like what I just showed you, you could leave it to before, but I'm going to put it to after and say apply, and then go back. Now watch what that does here. We're back in our note input mode here. I'm going to actually play the G, type number 6, puts it in as a quarter note, then hit the dot, and it changes it to a dot, and then type the number 5. And then here again, I'll type a number 6, and then hit the dot, and then hit the number 5. So I prefer to actually put the dot in after I've put the note in. Let's try some trickier dotted rhythms, dotted 8th and 16th. So we'll do a dotted 8th, hit the dot, and then 16th, that's number 4. Dotted 8th, hit the dot after that, and then hit number, for the next note, hit 4, that's the 16th. And let's just put a couple 8th notes. All right. Let's try one other thing real quick. I'm going to shift select those notes and hit R. Remember our shortcut? And just repeat that. Now I have 2 of that. Or let's also rehearse something else. Remember we did shift clicking to select those notes, and now if I option click over here, I get those same notes. Practicing something that we showed you earlier, the option clicking or the R for the repeat. Either way, those are great shortcuts. Let me just show you one other really neat way to put in dotted rhythms. In this measure here, I'm going to put in straight rhythms first. So I'll just use the number 5 and the number 6 for that quarter note, right? But let's say I select and I'm shift clicking to select these notes, and then I type the period, or I could either type the period, or I could just select this icon over here, the dotted rhythm icon. Notice what it did. It turned those even 8th notes into dotted 8th, 16th, and it would do the same thing with dotted quarter and 8th. So that's a great shortcut. We've hit a lot of topics, but we really do need to address triplets, and I'm going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and enter our note entry mode. And I'm going to just put a quarter note in, hold the D, press the number 6. Okay, but the next notes I'm going to do are going to be triplets. To invoke the triplet mode, I have to type the semicolon. And it'll default to be 3 notes in the space of 2, and that's why that 3 is there. So I'll just accept that default, and now I'm going to play, let's say I'll type the number 5 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And I'll do it again, this time holding 2 notes. 1, 2, 3. Notice it stays in the triplet mode as long as I'm typing. Now, if I want to get out of the triplet mode and go back to normal notes, I have to type the colon. So that's canceling out the triplet mode. So now when I play, for instance, this chord, that D minor chord, and hit number 6, it's not a quarter note triplet, it's just a regular quarter note. But let's go back into triplet mode, semicolon. And let's do some more 8th note triplets, and it'll just keep doing it until I'm going to type the colon to get out of it, and now I'm going to type just number 6, give me some quarter notes. But the next 6 notes I want to be a tuplet, so I'm going to, but a sextuplet. So I'll type the semicolon, but this time instead of accepting that 3, I'm going to say 6:4. In other words, 6 in the space of 4. I give it a ratio, and now it knows that the 6 notes that I play will be sextuplets in the space of 4, and that would be 16th notes. So let me do the number 4, right? And it gave me 16th notes of tuplets. And now again, I'm going to do colon to cancel out the triplets, and just put a half note at the top of that number 7. Right, so getting tuplets is as easy as using the semicolon to get into the tuplet mode and using the colon to get out of the tuplet mode, and then putting the ratio in, either accepting 3 in the space of 2, which is the default in that little popover you saw, or 6 in the space of 4 for the septuplet, but you can do any kind of tuplet that you like. And while we're here, why don't we quickly review something we learned earlier in this video, a courtesy accidental. Say I would like to put a sharp there, I can just add the sharp like that. If I want to put a parenthesis around it, I could do Command 8 to open this properties panel, and then under accidental, right, make sure accidental is toggled, say round brackets, and I can put that courtesy accidental in there. Review is good, right? All right, we're almost there. Basically, two things I want to show you. One is, what if the durations that Dorico gives you is not the durations that you like? Let me go into note input mode and put a little dotted rhythm in here. Going to type the number 6 to get a quarter note, then a period. Remember, that's going to be turned into, as soon as I type the next note, number 5 gives me an eighth note. It's turned into a dotted quarter. And then I'll put another eighth note, 5, quarter note, and then an eighth note. All right, so what if I wanted that dotted quarter note D at the beginning of the measure? What if I wanted it to be, to remain as a tied note rather than it turning it into? So there's a thing called forced durations, and the shortcut for that is O, the letter O. But let me go over here and play that D again as a quarter note. But this time I'm going to click on the forced duration. I'm also going to type the letter T for tie, and then play the eighth note, which is number 5. And okay, now it looks like it did before, but watch, it's not going to turn into the dotted quarter because I said force that duration. So now when I put my next eighth note in, it stays as a tie. And let's do it again. I'll type number T for tie, and forced duration is still invoked. I haven't deselected it, so it's going to keep that as 2 tied notes, and then put the eighth note in at the end of the measure. One more crucial thing I need to include in this video on note entry basics, and that's real-time recording. We want to quantize, which means we want to round the values that I play in case I make a mistake and come in like a 16th note early or a 32nd note early. Dorico is capable of perceiving that. So we are going to go into the preferences one more time, and this time under play, and we're going to look for quantizing. And for quantizing, the melody I'm going to play doesn't have any shorter rhythms than an eighth note. So if eighth note is not selected, like say 16th note had been selected, make sure we change it to eighth note. I also know there's going to be no tuplets. So if there was tuplets detected, checked, let's uncheck that so that it doesn't do that. Also, I'm not going to be playing any grace notes, so I can unselect that as well and say apply. So this is the quantizing settings, which is really critical if you want to get a good recording. Also, while I'm thinking of it, here in the Dorico preferences under play is where you would configure the MIDI keyboard that you're using. So for instance, I'm using a Casio USB MIDI, and that's where I would select that if it wasn't already selected. By the way, the melody I'm going to record is 8 measures long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only have 7 measures here, so I'm going to add a bar or two. I can use the pop over Shift B for bars, and let's put let's just add 4 more bars just to give me the space I need. Okay, let's go ahead and do some real-time recording. By the way, right now the metronome is set to 120. If I want to toggle this off and then adjust the metronome to even slower, like say I want to play it at more like 110 rather than 120, because I said quantizing, I think I could have played it at 120, but we'll try it at 110. That's a little safer. And I'll go ahead and hit the record button. 1, 2, 3, 4. Two, three, 4. I played the last note wrong on purpose just to show you that, even after you do real-time recording, for instance, I might want to take that up a half step. Do you remember what the key command is for natural? That would be 0. And then if I want to change it to a whole note, that would be the number 8. And so I could fix those mistakes after I've saved all the time by playing most of it in as real time. Okay, we're about done this overview of note entry basics. Just want to mention 2 real quick things that I think people are going to want to know as soon as they start putting in notes. One is, what if you want to break the beaming? Here it's beamed in 4. What if I want a beam break here? Well, if you control click or right click on a note and choose split beams, that could separate it, right? So that's one way of doing it. Another way of splitting the beams is actually to go into the notation options. And then look for, I'll just search for beams here, and beam grouping, right? Here it is in beam grouping for eighth notes in 4/4. If I change it to that and say apply, when I go back, then my beams will be broken. But it'll be that way all the way through the entire piece, not just for that individual instance. One other thing too is, what if you want to flip stems to be, instead of stems up, stems down? The shortcut for that is just F. Do that, and it'll toggle those one way or the other. So those are two things that I think once you start putting in music and looking at music, you might want to change. Okay, this has been a lot, and but now in one video you do have all the overview, at least, of the basics of note entry, from clicking them in, to using your QWERTY keyboard, to using your MIDI keyboard, to real-time recording, and so many other options. Hope this is helpful. Good luck learning Dorico.